This week on the show.
Today on the show, we have Enrique Jevons with Jevons Property Management. This is Steve Rozenberg, and I am your host of the Landlord Survival Show.
This is the Landlord Survival Show. When people stop being nice and shit gets real. You're the landlord. We're here to help. This is a show for what the gurus don't tell you about owning rentals. We're here for you because we're stronger together.
Brought to you by Empire Industries Property Management, built for investors, by investors. For more information about this show, please visit our website, selfmanagemyproperty.com, home of the ultimate Landlord Survival Handbook.
Now, the Landlord Survival Show with your host, Steve Rozenberg.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Landlord Survival Show. This is your host, Steve Rozenberg. I am the owner and co-founder of Empire Industries Property Management Company. I guess I could say that I am the creator of the Landlord Survival Show now. Landlord Survival Show, very simply, we are a podcast show, we are a Facebook group, and we are a website. All of these things are here to help you, the investor. This is not a way that we want to make money. This is not a way that I'm trying to do anything except help fellow investors like myself who sometimes maybe get involved in real estate like I did. And maybe after they get into real estate, they realize that they are in way over their heads. Maybe they bought the wrong property. Maybe, just maybe, they were lied to or maybe told a fib about a deal, and the pie in the sky sitting on the sand collecting passive income is not exactly materializing like they thought. And so I kind of got sick and tired of seeing all these seminars and all these people that are constantly telling you how easy it is and how simple it is to buy a deal and find a deal and flip a deal. And while, yes, it can be easy to do that, what it's not easy doing is actually being a successful investor to get money out of your investment properties time and time again. And I think that I just did a quick video yesterday, actually, on Facebook, talking about how a landlord is a dying breed. And the reason I say a landlord is a dying breed is the landlord is the person who wants to do it themselves. They are the person who wants to run to Home Depot every single time. They want to be the hero to unclog the toilet at 2 a.m. And while that's all well and good in the beginning days and maybe when you have one property, but if you're like my guest today who has over 70 properties and manages over 600 properties, that is not so easy. And you start realizing that the investor is the true success, not the landlord. And the investor is the person that has team, they have leverage, they have the right mindset so that when you buy an investment property, you're looking at it as an investor, not a landlord. And it's a paradigm shift that I think a lot of people need to learn because of the laws, because of the legalities and fair housing and discrimination, Fair Credit Reporting Act. And I mean, you name it, you have so many chips stacked against you as a landlord. Unfortunately, they don't tell you that in the seminars. They don't tell you that in the courses because they want you to buy their course so you can buy a deal. But that's really when it all starts. The rubber meets the road after you own that deal and how you're going to get the money out of it. So if you like this show, my one request is that you do ask and invite a friend to download my podcast show on iTunes. You can also go to our website, selfmanagemyproperty.com, and there you can find our Ultimate Landlord Survival Handbook. That is a book that Pete and I created. The reason we created this handbook is this is how we manage over 1,000 properties every day. This is how we screen our tenants. This is how we do background checks. This is how we get make-readies done. This is how you evict a tenant, what you should, and more importantly, what you shouldn't say, because it's really what we shouldn't say that gets us in trouble. It's not what we should say, because I think we all know that in this world, we maybe sometimes say things and do things we shouldn't do, only to find out when you're standing in front of the judge that it was illegal or wrong or immoral or whatever the case may be. And so we created this manual, the Ultimate Landlord Survival Handbook, to help you guide you as a reference tool so you don't make these mistakes and you don't get the opportunity to stand in front of a judge to explain that you didn't know the law. And so also, if you like, you go to Facebook, you can follow us on Facebook. We give you every reason to succeed. If you fail, basically, it is your fault. And I think that, you know, the guest I have, my good friend who's here today, all the way from Tacoma, the country of Tacoma, we'll call it. But we'll talk about him and what he's doing. But again, you know, if you like the show, invite people. This is what it's about. There's not many of us out there that are true investors that are learning how to be better at our craft. And unfortunately, there's a lot of things against us as investors. And if you don't have the right mindset, you don't talk to the right people, you don't associate with the right people, and you don't learn from the right people, you're going to fail. And my goal is to try to help you not to fail, because that's the biggest problem in this industry right now. So with no further delay, I'd like to invite my good friend, Enrique Jevons. Enrique, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, Steve. Thank you so much for having me on today. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. My pleasure. So, Enrique, I'll let you do your own intro. Tell everybody kind of who you are, what you do, how we met, and let's kind of go from there.
Yeah, it was wonderful. It was a couple of years ago when we met in Seattle. It was at a real estate event, of course, where we were both speaking, and so that was pretty exciting to get together. It was a couple of hundred people, and that was the very first time at a Pacific Northwest real estate event. It has put on by Tarl Yarber.
Yep.
He then this last year did it again, even though he swore that he wasn't going to do it after the first time, because really, you know, his thing is flipping. It's not putting on seminars by any means. But he did it again for lack of another good one there in Seattle, and it was a huge success, even greater. So he's on the roll, kind of snowballing, just as investments for me has been a snowball effect. He's got the same going on there with a couple of seminars. So that was very fun meeting you. So definitely always encourage people to attend, you know, as many events, as many meetups, as many seminars as you can to, you know, put yourself out there. It's certainly hard at first to, you know, walk into a room of strangers, but it's worth it.
Well, yeah, and you know, and you're right. You know, Tarl and Grace, I mean, just class act people. I love them, both of them. Both great people. But you know what they do is they create an environment for investors. And you know, I'm in this environment with a bunch of flippers and wholesalers, and I'm kind of, you know, you're in that a little bit, but I'm really not in that world, and I'm kind of the odd man out. But you know, but it didn't turn out that way in the end. It actually was very, very good for me. But you know, what was interesting is you and I met. And we had a conversation, and I started introducing you to some people I knew, and I think that actually took you went and talked to Darren Hunter, I believe, and some other people.
Yep.
And it goes to show that when you open up your mind and you start seeing other people and seeing other events and just associating, even though it sometimes is uncomfortable, I think we all have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And I think nobody likes to look dumb, nobody likes to feel bad. But you're going to get what you've always got. And, you know, I've learned that, you know, what got you here is not going to get you there. And if you don't go to events and you don't do anything, that's where you're going to be. And you and I have seen that by, you know, we've had a good relationship. We've gotten to know each other. We've chatted. Last year, we were both on the panel together in Seattle. It was fantastic.
Yep.
So
yeah, definitely. Yeah, reaching out to, especially to people who are just you know, slightly ahead of yourself. So I remember at the time a couple of years ago, you were saying, "Oh, you had 700 doors." I had just barely gotten 600 doors at that time, and so yeah, I was definitely hitting you up for all the different systems that you were using and doing there, because certainly getting me connected with Darren Hunter was wonderful. He really helped change my mindset with regards to fees and such, and so that really helped a lot. I remember you introduced me to Box Brownie. So the
Box Brownie is awesome.
You know, the site that does a wonderful job of enhancing photos. So I highly recommend, you know, people go to that site as well. There's you know, there were countless other people that even though maybe some of the systems, you know, is doing a little bit already, certainly you are at the next level, and so kind of hitching on your coattails has really helped me. I'm actually at 791 doors right now at the moment. So
awesome. Good for you.
So doors are good. But at the same time also, I have let go of a lot of doors simply because I'm trying to, you know, focus much more now on revenue than door count. And certainly that was a mistake I made early on, was focusing too much on door count.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. We've done a shift that as well. Instead of us focusing, very same as you, instead of doing how many doors we're bringing in, it's like how much revenue per property are we bringing in? Meaning, are we bringing in a low income property? Are we bringing in a high income? And you know, what's the time factor on this? So that rings very true to us. We may actually crest 500 new properties this year coming on. So you talk about a lot of systemization and things that have to happen. I mean, we have a lot of wheels turning over at Empire. There's no doubt about that. And, you know, I think it starts though with educating the investor. I think if you can educate the investor on the front end and you can, you know, look, I buy properties, you know, we're going to talk about what you own and what you're doing. I don't think that you would be who you are today, especially in the management world, if you didn't have that background of being an investor. Would you agree?
Yeah, definitely. So my whole career, actually, you know, straight out of college, was in the hotel industry. And in the hotel industry, I was getting stock. I was worked for Hyatt Hotels for most of the time. I then was 9 years at Stanford University, and then 3 years as a general manager for Marriott Hotels. And all during that time period, I was gaining experience in the hospitality industry. I did have a couple of rentals, so I was gaining experience in that field as well. But also I was, you know, always maximizing my 401k, the matching 401ks that the companies had to offer. And so then I was using that money to figure out, you know, stocks. So early on, I was investing in stocks, and I've never let go of that investor mentality, and, you know, always making sure that I focus on the numbers, focus on the investments, have a goal in mind. I'm 54 years old right now, and my game plan is retiring at age 60. So I've got 6 years left to go. I know exactly where I want to be, when I want to be. And so that for me has been the reason why I've made the decisions I've made over my life.
Okay, so let's break this down a little bit for people, because I think what you said a lot of very, very important things in there that kind of you just brushed over because you know them. The first thing I got from you was you have a goal, right? You have a destination. You're going to Disneyland, right? So what is that goal? Let's just say for you, and if you don't want to say, that's fine, but what does that goal look like for you? Is it a monetary number? Is it a revenue number? What is that gets you to say, I made it to Disneyland? What is that?
There is a revenue number, but the revenue number itself is not the goal. The goal is actually the lifestyle. And so my goal in 6 years, age 60, it's a round number. That's why I picked it. But, okay. And it's earlier than, you know, just a full retirement age, you know, traditionally speaking. But the goal actually at that point is that our kids will have graduated high school, so they'll be off in college at that point. And what we can do then is we've decided, my wife and I, that we don't necessarily want to live in any one specific place, but for us, retirement means we want to live around the world. And so that means that we may end up choosing to purchase homes in different areas or condos in different areas. And so we might spend 3 months living in Italy, and we might spend the next 3 months living, you know, in Sun Valley. We'll go skiing, or in the next 3 months, we'll go and live. Actually, my wife wants to make sure it's always 70 degrees wherever we live, so we'll have to fight over the Sun Valley one. But the idea is 4 different places throughout the globe, and likely those places will keep changing. We'll do 3 months at a time, because for us, 3 months is where you kind of really get to experience living there, not just vacationing for a week.
No, that's great. Okay, so the destination is 4 different cities to live in. So what is the strategy to get there? Because I think a lot of people, you know, and I was one of them, you know, when I first started buying properties, I was buying them because I thought it was a good deal. The reality is they were good deals, but they were not good deals based on my goals. I never put the 2 and 2 together. So I was buying deals because they looked like they were great cash-on-cash return properties on a monthly cash flow. The reality is they were low-income properties. That never even happened. But the one key that I never got out of it was I never got any appreciation. And so my challenge is if somebody would have asked me, hey, Steve, you don't need the money. You know, you're an airline pilot. You don't need the money to survive. Why are you buying these properties that are giving off monthly cash flow? You should be buying something for long-term. No one ever asked me that question, so I did not know. So to me, it's like when you ask a construction guy, you know, every wall needs a nail with their hammer, you know, and that my challenge was every deal was a deal because I didn't know how to quantify a deal. So what is the strategy that you use to quantify the deals to get you to that goal? And before you answer that, my question is, have you always been that strict, or have you had to hone it over time?
Oh, I've definitely honed in on it over time. So definitely, I would say my life has predominantly been, I just want to get progressively better and better. I just want to keep progressively moving on. But in the hotel industry, my goal was definitely, I was general manager was my goal. I wanted to become the top dog in the hotel. I wanted to become general manager. When I got to be a general manager, and it was a combination of things. It was a combination of reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and then making me realize that, oh my gosh, here I am signing the checks every week, you know, doing the check run that the accounting department produces, and one of those checks is to the owner, and realizing that, hey, I'm not the one who's making the money here, it's the owner. And I would go and meet with the owner once every 6 months. He's always playing golf. I'm thinking, wait a second, he's making money, he's having this wonderful lifestyle. I think I would rather do that than work my ass off 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So that changed my goal. So I did reach my goal. So I do think it's extremely important people have goals. Of course, your goals can change as you age, you know, as you mature, and as you reach your goals. You know, there have been several times where I've reached goals and then realized that, no, I want to keep going. I'm still young enough. I still have enough energy, and my health is still good. So there's no reason not to set a new goal and continue to push myself.
So, okay, now, just to bring everyone up to speed, how many rental properties do you have now?
Okay, so at the moment it's 71. Yeah, I went and looked online to make sure that I got an accurate count. So as of today, this moment, it's 71. But the number always fluctuates because of the fact that I've always either got something coming or going. And the same goes with, you know, the total that we manage. It's always every day it's a different number. So the over my life, I've had just over 200 altogether, although 100 of those were a lease option mobile home parks that I only carried for a year, and then decided, nah, I wasn't going to do that. And that was more, you know, along the lines of what you were thinking on the low income stuff.
Right.
And then the other, it was I had a 54 unit that was in partnership with somebody, and I was very glad to get out of that partnership. And so as a result, the 71 that I have left, those are just in my personal portfolio. Those just myself. No other investors with that, and that's either just properties that I own outright or, you know, have a first mortgage on. I don't have any seconds or anything on.
Now, let me ask you this. On these deals, have you, because they didn't align with what your future goals were, is that why you got out of the deals, or what was the reason of exiting some of these deals?
Yeah, so it was. What worked out beautifully was, it was a guy who had accumulated a total of 5 mobile home parks. It was 120 some units altogether. And I was thinking, no, mobile home parks, you know, and I'm reading Bigger Pockets, and I'm thinking, you know, they just run themselves, right? Okay. Not don't always believe that everything is simple.
I'm a French model on the internet.
Right. So he kept trying to sell them to me. I kept saying no, no, no. And I told him, you know, partly it was a new space. It wasn't something I completely knew about, but, you know, I can also learn about it. But I did tell him that, you know, I thought it was priced too high. Anyways, we'll manage him for you. He was leaving town, and he just said, no, I want to just be done with him. He finally gave me a great deal where it was no money down, literally no money down. He's going to finance all of them. And he just wanted to do then, you know, and I said, well, it's still too high risk for me. And he said, I'll give it to you on a 1-year lease option plan. So for year 1, it was that, and I had just to give him 60 days notice if I wanted out. And so year 1, that just paid a monthly fee. So then I was just the leaseholder. We did file everything, you know, through the title company, everything was above board. And I was just paying him a monthly fee at the end of the year. I could have exercised my option to purchase, but instead, as that year near the end, I gave them the 60 days written notice not to exercise my option to purchase. And that was because of a couple of reasons. One is that on a couple of the mobile home parks, they had septic tanks that were failing, and the city, when I talked to them, said, no, once they fail, that's it. They're going to be red tagged, and you're going to have to connect to sewer. Investigate the prices of that. It was just astronomical, so there was no way I was going to make back my return on investment at that point. That was probably the biggest reason why. But the second reason why too was on the low income stuff. And I do still have a lot of low income properties, both that I own and that we manage. But over time, I'm starting to, reposition myself, get rid of those lower income stuff, and start to move up the food chain there. It's tough. It's tough managing low-income properties. You can still make them work, you can still make them cash flow, but it's not for the faint-hearted by any means.
Well, it's funny you say that, because I tell people all the time, the deals that we own, the properties that Pete and I bought, I always preface to say they weren't bad deals. They were bad deals for us because we did not have the right business model wrapped around them. I know the people that I sold them to, they make money on them, and that's fine. And then, you know what? And I know that they work for people. The way that I wanted to run the business and the way I wanted to handle things, it was just not a cohesive. It just wasn't working, basically. And so, but let me ask you this: let's go back to this trailer park, because you see a lot of people online and they talk about mobile homes. Sorry, when you talk about people that do this, what do you think are the pros and what are the cons to owning these? Because I'm not too familiar with that, and I know there's people on this show that do. Pros with mobile home parks is if you can get them, I think, more in the B, maybe running into C class, but if you can get a B class mobile home park, then the idea is that, yes, people, because they're purchasing their mobile homes, they're going to take care of the mobile home itself. They have more pride in ownership, and the stickiness factor of it's hard to move. And so unless you have wheels,
you can only move a mobile home
unless you have wheels and a license plate, then it's easier to move it.
Yeah. So it's hard, and even then, you're only allowed to move it so many times. The mobile homes, and so there are limitations there. And so the idea is that all you're then concerned about is you're still going to have to keep the park clean, and I think people do sometimes forget about that. That you're just paying for these utilities. That's the thought. People get into it thinking, oh, all I'm going to have to do is pay for the water, sewer, garbage, and collect the rent. That's it, right? And it can be true on some nice mobile home parks, but there's also then a lot of mobile home parks which are not so nice, where you got the neighbors are fighting. And so then they're calling the cops on each other. They're calling you on each other. They are leaving trash out and overwhelming the dumpster, and they're just leaving trash in general, and so the place gets bad.
It becomes a management
issue. Are not
issue.
always good about paying rent,
So it basically becomes it goes back to being a management intensive. Would you say?
Yep.
They get management time intensive?
Yeah. So exactly. So in my opinion, mobile home parks, they're just the same as low income multifamily properties in that they're labor intensive. Now they can throw off a lot of cash, and so if either you have the time yourself and you're fine with that, great. Or if you have the system set up in place so that you can hire somebody else to deal with it, then great, and it's totally fine. And so that, like you said, it is a good investment for people who are interested in that sort of thing. Certainly, when you can liken it to the stock market too. There are some stocks that throw off dividends every year. So if you're interested in getting annual dividends, because that's what you want. And then there's stocks which are growth stocks, don't produce any dividends, and you want to just simply have that portfolio grow over time. And so it's the same thing, I think, with, as you mentioned, properties. You can either purchase for the cash flow or you can purchase for the growth.
So let me ask you this. When it comes to a mobile home park, is there a number that it works? Like, let's say it doesn't work under 10, but it works above 50. Is there a sweet spot for that in those types of properties to where you can, because for an example, let's just take a small apartment complex. You get a small apartment complex. It doesn't make sense to have an on-site staff member, at least here in Texas, unless you're at about 75 units. So anything below 75 units, you have the hybrid of the mother hen lady that's living in the complex that talks the loudest, so you let her be the one in charge of collecting rent and all that, and her husband does handyman work. Is the same rule of thumb in the mobile home park, or no?
Yes, it is definitely very similar in a mobile home park in that if you only have 20 units in the mobile home park, there's no way that you can really justify having an on-site person, a full-time person. Now, it doesn't mean you can't. You don't check on the place, you just check on the place in a different way. So it can be your groundskeeper, or you hire your groundskeeper, and your groundskeeper's going by and mowing and blowing, keeping the park, nice, either on a however many days basis. And that person then you make sure is reporting back to you anything that doesn't look good. So it's not to say that not having an on-site person is necessary. You just have to do it differently. But also, I prefer not to have on-site people regardless of the size. And the reason is, for me personally, my experience with on-site people has been that they always start out good, but then after a while, it's like pulling teeth. They get kind of lazy, complacent. And the other thing that happens that I think is just human nature is they start to become friends with some of the tenants at the in the complex, and they start to really dislike some of the tenants in the complex. And then pretty soon I've got people contacting me because they're saying, that on-site manager is terrible. He always he never cleans our area. He's only cleaning their area. He never responds quickly to our maintenance requests. He only responds quickly to their maintenance requests. And you got this fight going on back and forth. So for me personally, I would rather use outside vendors to come in. If the building needs security, I would rather hire an armed rent-a-cop security company to come out and check on the place nightly. If it needs groundskeeping, I would rather have the landscaper do it. If it needs then people who are fighting within the park, I would rather deal that centrally from the office than.
I used to just basically everything that you just said I would describe as adult daycare. That's that's what you're doing, right? Is you're dealing with. It comes down to it's a people business. You got to deal with people. Everybody has challenges, whether they're high income, low income, no income. You got to deal with the bullshit that goes on in that particular genre in that area. And sometimes people fighting and not getting along. When your phone's ringing, It doesn't matter what it's ringing for. If it's ringing because someone's complaining on the other side, there's like they say, there's first world problems, second world problem, third world problems, right? What problems do you want to deal with? And that's the challenge. So let's dig in a little bit to your properties, because you've done a lot of different types of deals in owning real estate itself. Yeah. So you've got the 70-something properties now. Are you still buying? What are you doing with those?
Oh, yeah, I'm absolutely still buying. And I know certainly a lot of people, I've got friends of mine that are saying, no, I'm just going to hold at this point because I'm really worried about the market turning and all. And certainly we definitely all see the signs that the market is peaking. And so we all know that, it is always going to be, no matter what, ebb and flow where it's going to go high, it's going to go low, and you just have to be ready and be able to accommodate the highs and the lows. No, I'm still buying, and I always will continue to buy. I bought throughout 2008 all the way through the when it dipped, the market dipped, and I'll continue to do the same. The thing is that there's still going to be deals out there. Right now, they're a little bit harder to find, and so probably my pace is slowing a little bit. However, I also changed tactics in that because the valuations are higher right now, for me, remodeling is what is proving to be a good use of my money. And so what I'm doing is with the, taking the lowest of low income stuff that I've got personally, I'm remodeling those, I'm repositioning those to bring them up to where I can attract a little higher caliber tenant, because after repositioning it, then I can go back to the bank I show them the new rent roll on the property. The valuation is based on the rent roll, and so that I can get the property refinanced at the higher valuation. So I can keep, then take that money and do it all over again. And then little by little, I'm making more money. So even though my unit count may not be going up, or may not be going up as fast because I am still buying properties, it's that my revenue is continuing to go up. So I do kind of change my strategy a little bit with how the market is, but no, and then once the market starts to turn and go down, well, then every buy is going to be a better buy than the deal before it on the way down. So
that's exactly, it's funny. I was waiting to kind of clue in and say that, a lot of people say like, don't buy, and then they say the market's going to crash. That's when you want to start buying. The true investors come out when the market crashes because, what I've learned is unless you sell that property, you're not losing any money. And as a matter of fact, in bad times, rents go up because people lose their houses, as sad as it is. But the reality is homeowners lose their houses and they don't turn into sugar and melt away. They become renters. And when there's price and demand, when there's a lot more renters in the world, your prices go up. And that's just the reality of economics 101. So what I tell people is, you should be sharpening your skills right now because when the market does crash, that's actually when you want to go in. That's when the true investors go in. The investors that are buying, like you said, just like you're doing, you slow your pace. You kind of sit back, you watch a little bit, you kind of get your financing in order. Like you said, you're getting your houses ready. The middle of the road houses actually do the best in recessionary periods because you get people from the upper end houses that are downsizing and the middle is where it always sits. So you can never go wrong, in my opinion, taking a bad house as long as the area permits to be able to increase the rent roll and increase the, everything that goes along with that. If that works, it makes all the sense in the world. And I think that's where my opinion is that I think a lot of investors fail when all of a sudden they start hearing the news and they start hearing the media and they start hearing all the naysayers tell them how bad it's going to be. I'm getting out of the market. That is actually when you need to double down, in my opinion, and you need to get, like, instead of buying one house, you buy 4 houses because that's when wealth is made. When people are running away from the market, you need to run in. Do you agree with that, or am I off?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That is definitely it. You definitely need to run in when people are running out. So the beauty about real estate is the fact that you don't have to do any one particular thing. And I definitely think that people need to adjust themselves based on the market. So if you're, for example, a developer and you see that the market is starting to turn, as a developer, I might be a little bit worried because developers' plays are much longer. It takes a long time to obtain the permits, to, develop the land. So you might think a little bit more short, start adjusting your plan so that if, as a developer, maybe all you're doing is you buy the lots and you quickly just do lot line adjustments and then you sell them real quick. You don't go through the whole business of putting all the utilities in and getting permits. Now, I'm not a developer, so I'm not going to speak too much to that, but that's what I would do or think is start to become a little quicker in my turns. If I'm a flipper, I would also start to think a little bit quicker in my turns. So maybe I don't do the big pop tops and huge additions of square footage. Maybe all I decide to do is just kind of prehab them, maybe just get them cleaned up and then resell them to somebody else who's going to come in and rehab them. So try and think of doing faster, tighter turns so that you can react a little bit faster when the market does start to correct so that you don't get stuck with stuff. But for me, buy and hold, like you're saying, as long as you don't sell while the prices are low, then there is absolutely no effect on you whatsoever.
Yeah, people, it's funny, when I had my properties and the crash hit in 2008, 2009, and, on some of my properties that we ended up keeping, they're like, oh man, you must be dying right now. And I'm like, well, why do you say that? They go, well, the economy's crashing. I'm like, yeah, but my rent comes in every month. They're like, yeah, but the value's less. I'm like, it's irrelevant if my rent's still coming in. That's the goal. The goal is to get rent and to have the property. Eventually, it's going to go up in value. It's a cycle. Everything's a cycle. But you touched on something that I think is important that a lot of investors miss. And what the challenge I think a lot of investors have is, again, I go back to the goal, right? So they think that their goal is being a developer, or their goal is flipping, or their goal is buy and hold. What they don't understand, and this goes back to not understanding definitions, is that those are strategies. That's like saying, I'm going to get to Disneyland and I'm going to take the 5 freeway to the 405 to the 91 to this to that, right? But then all of a sudden, and it's like using Waze, right? The app. So you're using Waze and you go, okay, my destination is Disneyland. As you're going down the road, and all of a sudden that strategy, that freeway gets clogged or gets blocked, and next thing you know, Waze gives you another strategy to get to your destination. So if you're coming down the path and you're saying, okay, I got into this industry, I'm going to do developing. That's my strategy to get to my goal. And if all of a sudden halfway down the road, that strategy, that freeway gets blocked, you need to come up with another strategy. You don't just keep going down the freeway, running into the roadblock and not getting anywhere and crashing. And that's where I think a lot of people, they mistake strategy for goal destination. And that's so important because, like you said, look, you went this route. All of a sudden, if the market shifts, you can't change the market, but you can change your strategy. And that's exactly what you're doing. I think that's such a valuable lesson, because I think a lot of people, they go down this path of saying, I'm going to buy and hold, or I'm going to flip, right? Let's just say the flipping, because that's kind of cyclical as far as what the market is doing. So if all of a sudden they say, well, I'm going to flip, and they keep going down this path, and that strategy is clearly, that window is closing, and they see the information, but they're choosing not to take that information and process it correctly. So what they're doing is they're getting the data. The data's telling you a story. That data is saying this is not becoming viable. You may need to change freeways and do another freeway for a little while till this, backup is gone. They choose not to. And that's when they go off the cliff, the financial cliff, as opposed to saying, you know what, I'm just going to hop over to the 101. I'm going to take that to the 110, and then I'm going to dip down, and then I'll get to Disneyland that way. And what you're doing is so smart, because you are starting to audibilize, because, again, we all know this isn't magic, right? Real estate goes in cycles. It's normally a 7-year cycle in general. This was probably a little bit different because the last cycle was so deep, but it is a cycle. It goes up, it goes down, and then it goes sideways. It's just, it's doing what it does. And people act so shocked when they go, man, I can't believe the market's doing this. It's like, this is like the same thing as summer coming. If you're not shocked that summer comes every year, why would you be shocked that markets go up and markets go down? And maybe it's the maturity. You and I have been doing this a while, and we've seen the ups and downs. And I think that new investors don't really know what it is that information is telling us. Or we choose not to. We choose to ignore. We choose to ignore like Waze telling us to get off the freeway, right? How many times, I don't know about you, but so many times I've been on that stupid app and it tells me to get off, and I'm like, no, it's fine. The freeway's open. And I turn the corner and I'm like, oh man, I should have listened. Should have listened to it. And the same thing with real estate.
Yep. Well, the unfortunate thing is that it's one of the things that keeps people out of the market, out of real estate too, is people get very scared. And so they're too scared to get on the freeway because there might be a delay. But they're too scared to jump into real estate because they hear, oh no, I heard that evictions are horrible. And so I don't ever want to be a landlord because I've heard that, it just takes years and millions of dollars to get a tenant out. Or I've heard that, no, the crash is coming, and all these real estate, you can get wiped out, and so no, I don't ever want to get in. So you can't be scared. You just have to be prepared.
Yeah, and I think the challenge a lot of investors have is, number one, 70% of all the words and thoughts that go through our brain are negative, right? We humans, as humans, we gravitate towards negative thinking. And so whenever you hear a failure of someone, you don't hear about the people that are getting wealthy, like you have 70 something properties, you've got cash flow coming in. They count you as a one-off. But the guy who gets the 2 a.m. toilet call, that, I don't know about you, but I've never gotten a call at 2 a.m. to fix a toilet, but maybe someone has. But in any event, they hone in on the worst case scenario, or a tenant. Right. I had an uncle in Kansas City, and he had a tenant that couldn't get out, and they got all this story, and that's what they hang on, and they choose to, I think they have the fear of unknown. They don't educate themselves, because most of the time, I think that when you educate yourself on a subject or on a matter, once you're educating and you go, you know what? Okay, I guess it's not actually as bad as I thought. I guess it's this, it's that. And I think as investors, the biggest challenge that we have is we focus so much, or I don't, but I did. I'll say I was victim of this as well, is I was so focused on the deal. I was so focused on the interest rate. I wanted to know the price point, the cash on cash return. I never focused on the morning after when I owned the property to go, okay, how do I make this work every day now? I never even thought about that. It was like, oh, now you got to get the money out of it. Now you got laws. Now you got regulations. And the thing is we focus so much on the buy. We don't want to look stupid. We want to say we got a great deal. We want to say we did this. But we never actually focus on how we're going to run the business of it. And that's why people fail, because I think the challenge is a lot of investors, they don't have any accountability. They're not running it like a business. In my opinion, I think that's the number one reason investors fail is they don't identify it as a business. They don't run it as a business. They don't have trackers, and they may say like, oh, it's just one property. Well, you can get very sued with one property just as you can with 50. It doesn't take much to have somebody, all the tenant needs to know is that word Google. And what are my rights? And as soon as they know their rights, and, I tell investors all the time, I'm like, whenever I speak at events, and I'll say, do we all agree that owning a rental property is a business? You have income, you have loss, you have profit, you have accountability, and they all agree. And I say, okay, who in here has a rental property? And they'll raise their hand. I'll say, okay, keep your hands up. Who in here has a business plan for their rental property written down that they follow? You may get one guy keeping their hand up or girl keeping their hand up, but that is it. And you're like, okay, do you see why most investors fail? You know it's a business. You know you have more governing agencies watching you than anyone else in the real estate industry. Everyone says you're a business, but the one person who's responsible to run it like a business doesn't even run it that way. And then you wonder why 1 out of 3 get sued. It's right?
It's truly amazing. So definitely, I think with real estate, you don't have to know everything. I mean, education is so important, but you don't have to be the actual one doing everything, knowing all that sort of thing, or have all the money. So in my opinion, you kind of need, there's 3 pillars for, to be a successful real estate investor. You need time, money, and expertise. Now, you don't have to have personally all those 3 things. So if you have time, great. Then you got to meet up with somebody who's got the money. That can either be a bank, it can be a private investor, that sort of thing. And then the third thing, expertise. You don't have to be the expert. You can hire an attorney to do your eviction. You can hire a property manager to run the property. You can hire an accountant to keep your books straight. You don't have to, try and pretend that you know it all. Now, if you are a great accountant and you're busy, then great. Go find the money, go find the person with the time, and you can do the accounting. So I think it's, do what you're really good at, put together exactly the business plan, the business model, and then you can see where you fit in to that business model, where you can be a key component to that business model, but don't make it such that you know it all, do it all. And even if, let's say you do know it all, it doesn't mean that you have to be the one to plunge the toilets, so you can be the one with the expertise, but you go find somebody else who has the time to manage that property for you. And it's the same too, like, I personally have the skills that I could build a chair. I could build a piece of furniture for my house, but do I have the time for that sort of thing? No, but sometimes, you buy something, you think, gosh, the quality is not that good. You realize, okay, I can either pay more for that quality, or I can, it's the same with any kind of vendors, with a general contractor, handyman, roofer, property manager, realize that you're going to get what you pay for. And so that's important to remember too. So it is not something to be scared of. Put together the business plan, figure out who the key players are going to be, and then move forward. Don't stay on the sidelines.
Yeah, it's funny you say a couple of things you said in there ring true. First one I'll say is, when I talk to people, me being an airline pilot, I'm a pretty busy guy, right? So I'm flying, and we got the property management company and the other stuff I do. And so people are like, man, you guys manage like 1,000 properties. How do you do that? How do you stay that busy? You must be busy. And I'm like, what do you mean? They go, well, how do you talk to all the owners? And I'm like, I don't talk to the owners. They're like, what do you mean? I go, well, I mean, I'll talk to them, but I don't talk to them every day. They're like, well, who does that? I'm like, we have property managers that talk to the owners. And they're like, how do you know all the accounting? I'm like, I don't need to know the accounting. I have to hire the right people, and those people kick up their KPIs to our company, and we track, test, and measure everything we do. And on top of that, I'm not the one who does all that. My business partner, Pete, is the one who runs the operations. I'm the guy who's out here doing this kind of stuff. So, it's a matter of putting your best skills to use. And I think one of the things that is so true, so you hit on a couple things. I don't think that entrepreneurs / investors, I don't think that they fail for lack of trying. We all know that as an investor, as an entrepreneur, if it means that we need to put 25 hours in the day, we would do that. We would do whatever it takes to be successful. And I don't think that that is why investors fail. I think investors fail for two reasons. Number one, they don't say no. They don't know how to say no to certain things. And they don't understand leverage of their time. They understand leveraging of people, and they understand leveraging of money. Meaning, let's say they get a real estate agent to help them do a house, or a mortgage broker to get money. Those things they understand. But when it comes to leveraging their own time, they're not so good at that, because they feel that that's how they contribute the most to their investment, because they're saying, well, it's my property, I guess I should go out there and check it out. No, you shouldn't. It's funny. I talked to a guy after I did the event, when I spoke in Seattle at Tarl's event. A guy wanted to buy some properties, and I said, okay. So I got him in. He said, oh, can you help me find properties? I said, yep, absolutely. So I have a full brokerage at my company that we own. So I got him so he thought I was going to be the one running around finding him properties. I said, I don't do that. I said, I have a team. So I wouldn't even be good at it, first of all. But second of all, that's not what I do. So I got him in touch with my broker, the agent, and they found him some properties. So he ended up getting a property, locking it up under contract. So he calls me up. He says, hey, Steve, I got a property. I'm like, congratulations, man. Good for you. He goes, so I'm going to be flying in on Friday, and I'm going to come look at the property over the weekend and this and that, blah, blah. And I was listening to him. And I said, okay. I said, can I ask you a question? And he said, yeah. I said, are you an inspector? He said, no. And I said, are you an appraiser? He said, no. And I said, have you ever seen a rental property before? He said, yeah. I said, what do you contribute to you coming down? What's the benefit of you coming down? He goes, well, I think I should see the property. I said, it's 4 walls and a roof. It's not the property that's going to make you the money. It's the business model inside that property that's going to make you successful. The house is the house. I've seen a lot of people buy great deals and run them right into the ground. Why would you want to spend your time, your money, away from your family, away from your career, to fly down to Texas unless you want to come to Houston? And I told him, I said, listen, no offense, but I don't have time to meet you. I've got other things I have to do, like spending time with my family and other stuff. I said, I won't be able to meet you. And I said, why would you want to spend your time, your money? I said, that affects the numbers on your deal. You realize that, right? You have to factor in your time, and you got to factor in the cost of coming down. I said, because if you're not putting a value on your time, no one else will either. And I said, that is the landlord mentality. If you are going to own properties out of state, which 50 to 60% of our clients are out of state, out of country investors, I told him, I said, if you're going to own a property out of state, you need to get into the investor mindset and not the landlord mindset. You have to stop thinking that you need to be here to do this. You are buying a business. I said, if you're buying stock in Chase Bank, do you go to the Chase building and stick your head into the corporate headquarters and kind of look around and see what's going on? No, you don't do that. You look at the numbers, you look at the PE ratios, you look at the dividends, you buy and you sell based on those numbers. And he said, you know what? He said, man, he said, you just saved me a plane ride and a weekend and probably an argument with my wife. He said, thank you so much for explaining that to me. I'm like, it's just a matter of having a paradigm shift of how to think about things. I said, you're running a business. Business owners value their time. And look, I'm just as guilty. I'm bad personally. Sometimes I do shit that I shouldn't do. I take meetings I shouldn't take. I do stuff I shouldn't do. But, somebody has to pull you back. And my business partner, Pete, he was always pulling me back on, hey, is that in line with the goal of the company? Is you going to here to speak or there to speak? If you want to speak, go speak, but make sure you understand why you're doing it. So that it's so important. But let me ask you this, Enrique. If you were to go back to you 25 years ago, what kind of advice would you give to yourself to say, hey, this is what you should do? Because you're a mature investor now. You've been doing this a while. You've taken your licks. You've gotten kicked in the face a couple times, like we all have. What would you tell yourself?
Well, certainly I would have said, yeah, start sooner. Don't be afraid. Keep pushing on. So that's probably the biggest thing is to start sooner and not be afraid. Because I've made mistakes along the way doesn't mean I regret those mistakes. I've just learned from those mistakes. So I'm totally fine with the fact that I have made some mistakes. So the reality is I don't know that I really would do anything differently other than buy more and just and start sooner.
What do you think was the biggest mistake that you made that maybe was a turning point? That you made a mistake, good, bad, or indifferent. You know, you probably got a lot of. Look, we all know that we learn from our mistakes. If you don't, then it's your fault. But you know, what do you think was? Can you remember back like something that happened? You're like, that is something I'll never do again, and maybe made you a lot more money in the future. Maybe it was even partnering with someone, a certain type of partner you wouldn't deal with, or a certain type of property, or maybe a mobile home park you wouldn't buy. But what is a mistake that you made that you go, that is a no-go, never again?
Yeah, I would say, fortunately, I've been lucky that nothing ever huge. I have, tried different things and decided I'm not going to do that again. So one of them was, with the partnerships. So the thing with the partnerships is that you have to make sure it's kind of like getting married. You got to make sure that you're getting together with somebody that you are going to, like, but you're going to be
married to
the same direction.
You're married to that person, basically, right?
Yeah, because you really are. It's especially with larger, the more units, certainly the better properties generally perform. They generally, cash flow better. But at the same time, they're harder to sell. There are fewer investors in the market. The higher and higher the unit count, the higher the price goes. And so you just got to realize that it's a big ship. Now, if you've got two captains trying to sail that ship and you're trying to sail in different directions, you're just going to be fighting over the wheel the entire time. And it's not going to be a very pleasant experience, and you're probably not going to get to the place you're going to go. And that's certainly something I learned with a 54-unit apartment building. Now, that if one person, you can still, I think, partner up where you decide, okay, one person's going to be the captain, the other person's going to be the engineer, or something on board.
Proper expectations.
I guess you would probably have a better analogy with flying. You got the pilot, the first officer.
Well, I've got a good buddy of mine. He owned about 1,200 units. He had a bunch of different partners, and he said, the biggest challenge is, he says, it's like you're dating someone for 3 days and then you marry them and then you find out one of these people are crazy and their expectations are not realistic. Even though you agreed upon it, it's in writing, it's on paper. He's like, one bad investor, and he had a bunch of large unit complexes. So he had a lot of investors in this. And he said, one investor can just ruin everything. They ruin the culture. They ruin the team. They ruin the just everything. And he said, man, it got bad on one of his deals. He said, I would walk away from this deal tomorrow if I could and lose all my money just to get away from these people, because the whole thing turned toxic. And what's funny is the deal did exactly what was promised on paper. It returned the exact amount that he predicted. He did exactly what he was supposed to do, but he said it was so toxic, it just wasn't worth the money. And so that's good.
So setting the expectation, making sure that you have an exit strategy, an exit plan, and making sure that plan is in writing when you partner up with somebody, I think is very important. So certainly with the mobile home park, the beauty of that one is that it was on this lease option. Essentially, it was essentially a partnership because, during that lease period, we're essentially co-owning the property. But the good thing was that we had it all in writing, and I had my exit strategy such that I could get out of the deal within 1 year's period of time if it wasn't what I wanted it to be. And that's exactly what I did. I did get out of that one. before the year was up.
Awesome.
So I think having that exit strategy is very important. If you're not sure, I would say, and you want to partner because maybe you don't have the funds to take down a deal by yourself, maybe start thinking more about a REIT, something where you can, put some money in passively, and you can get your money out. And so you're not tied into a specific partnership. So there are still ways to go about that.
All right. Well, Enrique, it has been an hour, my friend, as always. Yeah, it went quick, huh? Man. Yeah. Well, hey, Enrique, thank you so much for being on the show. I hope people get a lot out of this. I always get a lot out of it. I enjoy seeing you. Hopefully, if Charles asks me to come back in spring, maybe you can throw in a word for me. I can do another presentation up there. I think last one went pretty good. But again, if you want to catch this show, go to iTunes, download it there. Go to our Facebook group, Landlord Survival Group on Facebook, and go to our website, selfmanagemyproperty.com, and you can get all the information there. You can get our Landlord Survival Handbook. We just have a lot of video blogs and information, and we're just really starting to stockpile more information on there, because the one thing we want to do is we really, really want to educate investors, and I hope the people watching today got a lot out of this. Enrique, you have so much knowledge. People don't even realize, you probably don't even realize how much you know nowadays. So again, I thank you so much for being on the show. And until I see you again, my friend, we'll talk to you later.
Thank you very much. Take care.